Hello everyone. Thanks for joining me with the stream. So today we're going to do something a little exciting and a little different. I have an exhibition that opens at the end of the month, and I think I have enough time to make one more painting that's actually going to fit into this show really well. So I have my panel here on my easel ready to go, and give you a little idea of that there. Well, let's see if I can turn up the brightness a little bit. Well, zoom in a little bit more for you guys. Okay, I'll try to it's a different camera angle now, so hopefully we can have a little bit more discussion about what's on the palette and what I'm doing here. So I tried to zoom the camera out a little bit more, but of course if you have questions, just leave comments. I'm here to answer some questions and create a bit of a dialogue. Anyway, our source material you'll see on the side of the screen whenever I get that set up. Nostalgic things that might have some sort of idea of playful magic or good luck charm or anything such as that. There's a lot of paintings of figurines and things like that that I'm using as well. Anyway, let me go. All right. Hello again, everyone. I just realized my microphone was on mute, but we're going to get set up as I've done in previous streams with you all, and I've explained a little to you. I like to start out a lot of my painting with two essential colors for me, which are ultramarine blue and transparent red oxide. Those colors actually go together and they make my black-ish color that I will use to kind of cool and also warm to tint things as I need to tint them to make them a little stronger. So that's why I am just putting those on the palette. there in the middle, and then I'm going to go around and put some things around the edges here while we get set up. So ultramarine blue. Oh, see, and I've got this vice grip. Like my hands are too strong sometimes, and I put these tubes of the caps on the tubes of paint too tight. Anyway, Viridian. I forgot to put a little bit of transparent red oxide up top here. This tube is almost empty, but there's still a little bit of paint left, and it's too good for me to get rid of at this time and replace. But I have a backup. All right, let me grab a couple more colors and we'll get to work. Okay, and my apologies again for not having a lot of this set up in advance. I was running a little late as usual, and if you guys have been to the stream before, you've noticed that with me. I'm trying to fit in a lot of things in the morning, and I really get a little crunched with time. A tube of paint a color that I've really enjoyed lately and I've been using more and more is this color by Winsor Newton actually. It's called olive green. It's very dark, very, very dark, and relatively transparent. It's essentially made from ivory black and their Indian yellow color. So you get this really nice green through that. I mean, you can mix it up yourself, but this paint is relatively inexpensive since it's not something that's high in demand, nor has a very sought after, I guess, pigment, you could say, like some paints do. Let me see here. My alizarin is still pretty wet, so I'm gonna leave that alone. Put a little bit more yellow ochre down. And this here is a titanium white, or it's that warm white that I've been telling you guys about that Michael Harding makes. That's really, really amazing. I love that. But I'm also going to put down some lead white as well. This will help with the paint drying faster, and I kind of want to make sure that my paint is drying relatively quickly, especially since I have a bit of a deadline I'm working under. Titanium white is amazing, but it's also very opaque and it takes a long time to dry. Again, it's all relative, but that's one reason I do love a lead white, because of the faster dry time. Just handle it mindfully, you know, don't have don't eat it. You know, and if you get it on your hands, you know, just wash your hands. That's why I wear gloves, and I try to be really careful at all times with my studio practices. But the lead white dries very quickly, and, well, again, relatively quickly. Dries quickly, and it is somewhat transparent, so it does a wonderful job when mixing other colors. Sometimes it can be a little stiff in the tube, especially if it's an older one. So that was what you probably saw me doing, was mixing a little bit of more linseed oil with it, just to extend it a little bit more. And sometimes I put some convenience colors down. You know, these are colors that you can mix on your own for the most part. But sometimes just having something handy nearby that you use often is really a good thing. So some of my convenience colors are unbleached titanium, Portland gray medium. It's a gambling color, gambling only color. There. That's why it's called Portland gray. And I've really enjoyed using King's Blue Light. This is a Michael Harding version, but a lot of other paint makers have a King's Blue. For this painting, since this Lucky Rabbit's Foot is this interesting turquoise color, I'm going to use a color that I've used a lot lately, which I really love. This is an Old Holland color. You can kind of see that I've used it a lot. It's about out, but I've got a backup that I got a little while ago. Yeah. Anyway, here, had to fix something on the stream. This color, however, is a little stiff. A lot of Old Holland colors are actually pretty stiff out of the tube. I've heard they put wax in, and I don't know if that's true or not. And I really hope it isn't, because I've really been a fan of Old Holland colors. I don't like paint with any sort of additive, so if that is true, that's disappointing. If any of you guys watching this know, just please leave a comment. Anyway, if you have some paint in a tube that is a little stiff, what I recommend to do is just add some linseed oil. That's why I have this dropper that I keep handy. It's just got a little linseed oil with it. I mean, that's what this stuff is pigment in this tube with linseed oil, and they have it, you know, mold together to a certain consistency. And as it sits on a shelf or in a drawer or whatever, sometimes that oil actually leaks from the tube. Got something going on under here, hold on. It'll leak from the tube. Goodness, it might be that. There, it'll leak from the tube and dry the paint on the inside, which makes it kind of stiff. So sometimes I will take a paint out and it is a little stiff like that, and I'll just have to mix it with a little linseed oil. That looks like it's probably good enough to me. And put this on the side. I keep this right-hand side for certain convenience colors. And that's what we have. Okay. All right, so I've got a rough drawing. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit of this rabbit's foot that I did earlier. And this is going to be a little bit of a sort of a trompe l'oeil painting, I guess you could say, because it's going to, it's hanging on this background. And the background I'm actually going to make sort of a nice sort of light colored, like cream colored, and I'm going to give it a weathered look as well. Which will be kind of fun. I've done this in the past, and I enjoy that. So we're gonna do that as well. I already have a frame that's being built for this that's sort of a warm silver leaf, so it will look beautiful in that that frame as well. So my advice to you all out there, sometimes keep those sort of things in mind when you're making your painting, because when it goes to presentation, it is everything. So you want your presentation to be on point. So think about your frame. I mean, at one point I thought that this rabbit foot, this great turquoise color, that it might be pretty nice to have it on a dark, like rich wood background. Like I have some old chests here in my studio, some old wood stained chests, and I thought, oh, I'll use that, and it would really make the turquoise pop so well, you know, being very close to a complementary color. Unfortunately, I don't think that would look good in that frame that I'm having built. So we're gonna pivot, and it's gonna look better all together. Again, mixing up my dark, which is I'm gonna use for my black, my brown, all of the other things, and I'll just kind of mix into it. Again, this is ultramarine blue and transparent red oxide, and this is relatively transparent and actually dries pretty fast. So that's one thing I really enjoy about that color. And I'm just gonna put it on my palette down here where I keep my dark, just to save up some palette space. And wipe all this down. But again, I apologize, I didn't have a lot set up in advance for you guys. I just was running late as usual. I should have just said stream starting at 11. My fault. But now that we're set up, this will move fast. Let's go. All right, starting out, I'm going to use my medium of choice. Right now, I'm going to use turpentine. It's my solvent of choice, so I'm just gonna have a little bit of turpentine in this jelly jar and have that on the side of my paint book here. Put a little bit more out. And I'm going to start out with a bristle brush, and I'm going to just kind of wash in this background a little bit. Like I mentioned to you earlier, this is going to be sort of a cream background. So I'm going to use some lead white and maybe a little bit of this warm white from Michael Harding just to kind of beef it up some. And I don't have it on my palette yet, but I might grab some transparent transparent yellow oxide. Let me go grab that real quick. Trying to brighten the camera, but if for some reason this is This image just isn't as bright as I want, but maybe it's just because I haven't added any paint. Okay. Microphone back on. I used to not care for a lot of transparent paint years ago when I painted. I preferred opaque paint, and this is when I was new to painting, and I didn't quite understand why someone would want transparent paint. But I mean, as I've worked more as an artist, I understand more, and I understand glazing more. Like, you use a great transparent paint for glazes, but also like you can get some wonderful layering effects as you work with a transparent paint. When you're working just purely opaque, as soon as you start laying your paint down, it can really kind of gum up too much and become a little chalky. And it's hard to correct too once it gets that far along. You almost have to let it dry, scrape it down or something like that. So here we're using turpentine as our solvent. Again, this is lead white, a little bit of warm white from Michael Harding, and some transparent red. Excuse me, transparent yellow oxide. It's a color I love. It's not always on my palette, but I do have a spot that I have reserved for it. I'm not being too concerned with staying outside of my drawing at this point. I'm just going to kind of brush a wash over everything just to give us a coat of paint that we'll start to work with. Just giving myself some more of those colors. I like to pull the paint from my palette, you know, where the colors are on my palette, down to the mixing tray with a palette knife, especially early on, because as you're painting and you have a brush that's full of paint and you start going into certain colors, especially your whites, it's really going to start to taint those colors. And you need to be concerned about that. You want to make sure you are not adding something to your palette colors like that. I mean, I've done that before in the middle of painting. You reach up to grab a white, you know, for a very key highlight, and you're not thinking too much, you're not being too observant, and you go to put it down, and that white had like a hint of alizarin in it or whatever, and then the next thing you know, it's like, you know, you've got that color that's just seeping into everything. This is just a bristle brush starting out with, just to give us like something kind of aggressive to scrape everything down into the paint layer. I'm getting some more paint, lead white, a little Michael Harding's warm white, and again, transparent yellow oxide. Got a little too much yellow in it, so just add a little bit more of my white to my mixture. A lot of people will tone their canvases, and I've done that before. I still do it at times and enjoy it, but I don't always tone my canvases. Some people will do it like with a very thin wash of burnt sienna, for example. And what happens is you get this nice color that you can work off of. You know, you can kind of let it show and everything. But the drawback that you have is the color actually becomes a part of everything you're putting on it. So depending on what the color is, how dark it is, yada yada, it can really affect colors on top of it, and they can be less bright, less vibrant. You know, oil paint is transparent essentially, so what helps it glow is the light penetrating it and bouncing back. So when you have a white ground, it actually can make your colors brighter, versus if you had a darker ground and the light's penetrating and bouncing off that, then it's not going to be as bright. Okay, sorry, I had a bizarre error. So I just wanted to check on that, and left a comment in the chat. If anyone sees that, there's something weird, just let me know. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let that kind of set in a little, but I'm going to actually just wipe it with a paper towel. I don't want an excess amount of paint at this moment, but something to work with is going to be exactly what I want. Okay, clean my palette in this area. Okay, and now that we've got just a little bit of paint established on the panel, my next stage is actually going to be working on some of the shadow of the the Lucky Rabbit's Foot. So I'm going to grab a different brush at the moment. So what I want to use, I think I might actually use this number 4 Sable. A little turpentine, not much. And we have our black mixture that we've made, our dark, I guess I should call it. It's not exactly black. Now looking at my source photograph, I've got, I'm gonna work into the shadow area, which is kind of got a little bit of a greenish hint to it because of the reflected light from the rabbit's foot. So I'm actually gonna take my dark mixture and add a little bit of Viridian to it. I'm tempted to add some of the turquoise, but what happens when you add the turquoise, that actually has some titanium in it, it'll really, boom, like bump it up with brightness. Grab my maul stick. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more for you guys at this moment. I want the edge against where the rabbit's foot is to be soft. So I'm not trying to stay too rigid against the edge of the foot, the fur and everything. This could be serving as an initial layer as well. I'm going to try to do this painting over the course of maybe 2 sessions. But I'm not going to stress it at the same point. The painting needs to be what it needs to be. But I'm giving myself the time to make it right, and I'm giving myself some tools to make it dry a little faster, like I've described. This little area that we put in the background, that our little toned mixture that was lead white, warm white, and transparent red, transparent yellow oxide, that will actually be dry tomorrow, you know. But if we had done like this titanium, the unbleached titanium that I have over here on my right side of the palette, that would still be dry tomorrow. That would still be wet tomorrow, unless we used a like an alka dryer or something. And I'm always a little nervous to use those alkads, to be honest with you. There's a gray area of reflected light on the right side of the rabbit's foot against the shadow. So I don't want to get too close to the shadow, too close to the rabbit's foot with heavy color, so I can soften and also kind of get that reflected light. The reflected light is also kind of warm as well, which is fun against that turquoise color of the rabbit's foot. And as the shadow is further away from the object, the rabbit's foot, the more diffused it becomes. So it kind of will fade a little bit. I'm going to leave that alone for now. And like I often like to say, finish my thought with the painting in an area. So I'm going to block in some of the shadow up top of where this the keychain is. I'm going to change my shadow color a little bit. It's actually kind of warm there. So I'm just changing it slightly. I'm partially tempted to get a smaller brush. But I'm going to hold out, because if I use a smaller brush and something that maybe is a little more rigid to help me get into those small areas right now, I think it will make it feel less soft. At this point, I want to keep things, feeling pretty soft, a nice blurred effect. Like I tell you guys often, it's just when you're working, throughout your painting process, squint your eyes, because you're actually going to see more about the value of things, and proportions will make more sense. Textures, perspectives. And in this case, a shadow being soft, it's going to make it feel like a shadow, like something that's even in the distance behind this keychain. Just starting simple. My shadow is going to be a little lighter than that. But we'll get into that in the next phase of this shadow. Going to go ahead and lighten what I'm doing actually. So use a little bit of our lead white on that. And I'm actually going to hit it with some transparent yellow oxide. You'll notice that areas of a shadow will become crisper and darker the closer to the object that from which they're being cast. So as I'm looking at my object here, I can tell that the shadow, like on this side here, this right-hand side of the keychain, is actually getting a little crisper and a little darker as I move up it, because the chain is actually closer to the surface on which it's pinned versus down at the bottom. So just kind of right now, just giving myself a little bit more darker paint used in those areas. I want to lighten my shadows now. And if you notice from like what I've told you in previous streams, I kind of end up using sort of a string of paint. You know, trying to keep my darks down at the lower edge of my palette and move up to the lighter part if I'm using a color. And then I'll almost expand out from that, whether it's cool or warm or some other saturated tint. So you can just kind of keep your brush dipping into these areas of paint to get what you need, and it keeps things nice and organized and clean. Let me wipe this brush down. It's gotten a little tinted with previous color. It's making it a little difficult to go lighter. Dropping everything. Okay. Grab some lead white. And I'm actually going to use a little yellow ochre this time. Kind of mix it in with that. I try to keep my paint kind of thin in these early phases and then bulk it up as we go. Some people are just all about bulking at all times, and that's great. It's not how I work. And you have to be honest with yourself and how you work. No one else can do what you do, the way you do it. Kind of a simple thing that I'm doing right now, just putting down shadow on this keychain. It's kind of silly, but it's so important. And it might not be too exciting, but whenever it's done right, oh, it's gonna look so good. And it's going to make the illusion of this object, this lucky rabbit's foot being pinned to the wall, it's going to make the illusion of that even more convincing. And I'm not someone that's like a true trompe l'oeil painter where you're gonna look at my work, or you do look at the work and you're like, wow, that is stupid realistic. How do you do that and everything? Like, it's still a painting, and I still like it to look a certain way. You know, I don't get too crazy into the detail. I just like to give the audience some information. But there are some amazing artists that use trompe l'oeil that are working today, like Natalie Featherston and Anthony Wachulis. They're just like, wow, that's amazing, and that's truly a gift. Once we get this shadow in, then we can move on to areas in the foreground, which will be the front part of the keychain. And then eventually we'll get to the rabbit's foot. But as I like to work, and I've told you guys in the past, is you want to essentially kind of work back to front. It's going to make things a lot more, a lot easier for you to paint if you're doing it that way. And you can paint over things, obviously. Like if you have soft edges, you can paint over things and make sure you get that soft edge you want. What I'm doing now is I just have a cotton swab, and I'm just trying to soften some of these edges that have gotten a little sharper than I want. Anything at this stage helps. Granted, this is going to dry. We're going to do a little bit more to it, but anything I can do right now is going to help me later. So that's what I'm doing. These cotton swabs you can get online. They have a kind of a sharp tip to them. So it's helpful whenever you're like doing a little detail work to kind of cut in and get key areas. That's pretty good. One thing that's bothering me a little right now is there's this shadow edge here next to this metal cap of the keychain, and I want that to be higher. It is in the source image, my object that I'm looking at. You guys have an image of what I'm seeing. So I'm just wanting to add a little something to that. Small stick just to help me get into some areas a bit better. I'm going to use my Q-tip to soften that a little bit more. Pretty good. Okay. Evaluate the brush I want to use for the keychain. I want to do the chain elements of the key. Nothing really detailed that much right now. I just want to be able to get the key dark shadow areas, which you can see. So just rinsing my brush to get a sharper point. Okay, and I'm considering grabbing a sharper pointed brush for that area. I think I will. Get a little terp for that. And see, we already have our colors here for the shadow area that we had used before, and since it's pretty much very similar, just gonna use it. Or darks I've already been working with. I'm going to, this time, work a little at the top and work our way down in this case. And I'm just going to focus on the shadow elements of these balls and the keychain. Paint's a little stiffer than I want right now, so I'm just mixing up a little bit more on the palette, adding some more turpentine, and then roll my paint brush through it so I can like in a sense shape the tip of my brush. Now the balls that the keychain have in them that make up the chain, if you look at them, the darkest points are on the bottom and also on the right hand side. That is because the light is coming from the left and above. You know, we can see that obviously by the cast shadow on this wall, but the reflection in these balls tell us that as well. So I'm just kind of catching that information. I'm not obsessing over it, just quickly gonna hit a little bit there, move down the chain. This brush is a number 4 Crimson Taklon by Trekell. It's a synthetic brush, and it's a little stiffer than their golden Taklon. I'm not sure if this is something that's proprietary to them or what, or if you can get an equivalent to this in your art supply store. Anyway, it's a little stiffer of a brush in case you guys are have questions about brushes. This is something that is helping me achieve the desired effect right now. I'm ignoring the highlights. I'm trying not to paint like the entire chain, just sort of encircle the ball part, but put more paint in the shadow area, obviously, but leaving the the highlight area alone. Now this paint that I've mixed up, I keep sort of hitting it with turpentine because turpentine evaporates decently fast, especially when I'm keeping it thin. So I'm trying to get it to the consistency that I want, where I can like get a nice crisp mark with the paint, and it be thin, not too thick. Manipulate it the way I want on my brush, so sometimes you have to go back and forth to manipulate it on the palette with what you got. This clasp where the balls connect for the chain, I'm going to wait on that for a brief moment. Like I like to say often whenever I'm painting or drawing, I kind of often say, let me finish a thought. And right now with the underpainting, how these this ball chain is connected, it's very similar sort of mark making. Obviously there's going to be changes because of the way that the areas are closer to the light than others. But right now for this under phase, this under stage of painting, it's pretty simple. You know, like I just have to be able to control the mark and give myself the general idea of what the what is happening with light and shadow. And since I'm just kind of in a zone with that, I'm going to finish that part and then I'll go back and get the clasp. Another part is because I need to look at the clasp. I need to understand a little bit more about what is happening there. I already understand what is happening with the ball chain, but I need to understand more about the clasp. So that initial wash that we put on in the beginning of the stream is starting to like set up, and we're essentially working into it in a way, you know, because we like brushed it across the whole painting, but it was a large part of it was lead white, so it's drying, it's setting up nicely. So we're like working into it, and it's drying. So that's partly why I'm having to keep introducing the turpentine at this point, just so I can manipulate my paint on the surface as things are setting up. Okay, now I want to work on that clasp. So to get there, my source image that I'm working from is next to my palette on my iPad. And the beauty of your iPad is you can zoom in, if you have a good photograph, that is. I have this object set up in my studio as well. I like to work from life, but I also like to have a photograph handy because, you know, I can't see everything that greatly. So I can zoom in on the photograph and understand a bit more of what's happening. But having the object set up in real life that I can work from is also helpful because I can understand a bit more about the color and the form by looking at it in real life versus a photograph, because a photograph can be tinted a weird color based on how it's shot. It can also be distorted. You know, there's all sorts of things that happens in a photograph. So you have to be mindful if you're using a photograph for your source image. I'm not saying you can't, because I work from a photograph, but I make sure that I take the photograph, I manipulate it, I know what's going on with that picture. Okay, so that was obviously the most grindy part of this painting, was getting the chain and everything. Partly what I want to do next is the this metal clasp that connects the chain and the rabbit foot together. One other thing that you can do if you're working from a photograph like I am on the iPad, like I was telling you, is like I can zoom in and see the information, but then I can also zoom out. And when I zoom out, I'm like, oh wait, you know, you can see the form a little better. It's like when you get up and walk away from your easel and you see things that maybe you didn't see before. It's like blurry, it's like squinting your eyes and you start to see things. Anyway, I'm going to switch back to the sable brush for this clasp. Not only is it bigger, but it's softer. So I think it's going to give me what I want for this. So I'm going to get a little bit more of my lead white and warm white. Just looking at it first before I commit to anything. I'm going to use some of this olive green. Let me zoom out a little bit more for you guys. I need to find a better angle for everything so you guys can see the painting and the palette well. I'm still working on it. Let's see how that looks. I'm going to hit the area. I like to work darkest to lightest, essentially. So right now I'm using what I've mixed up to kind of hit this darker area I see on this clasp, or whatever you call this part. This paint, you can always, you know, scrape it off, paint it again, or paint over it, whatever. It's easy enough. But I like to try to get it, you know, in the relative family before I excuse me, before I move on. In trying to lock in like something that's close to the darker value helps. But essentially, we're going to work in the middle area. Like I like to work dark to light, but at the same point, I'm reserving my darkest darks and my lightest lights towards the end of the painting process. I was pretty careful when I did the drawing for this, just to give myself some helpful information. So when I got to do some of the initial blocking in, it would it'd be pretty smooth. And so far, this has been pretty smooth. No, it's not moving very quickly, but slow and steady wins the race. Pretty good. I'm gonna get some of my darks, hit a couple places. I want to get some of the lighter areas in here, like the mid values, but let me wipe off my brush. Dropping things. Couple steps I want to achieve here in the studio, then we'll take a quick break. All right, so what I'm going to use now is I'm going to use the Michael Harding's Warm White with a little transparent yellow oxide. And I'm kind of using this area where I had this white mixture before. Excuse me. I'm going to use actually a little yellow ochre. And this isn't anything that is, you know, super important. I just want to get some info in there. And surprisingly, that wasn't quite dark enough. So let me hit it once again. Looks nice, looks nice. And it's pretty similar colored on this left side also. So I'm gonna use that. There's an area where it's crimped, the metal's crimped there, so I might want to go in there and give that shadow area a little bit more information, because I kind of hit it with the brush a little bit, but right now that's an afterthought at this stage. Okay, cool. Let me get a little bit of a darker color. I'm going to hit this area with some pre-mixed areas on our palette. And get this. Okay, cool. Let me hit another shadow color, just getting some of our dark mixture, and hit this crimped area that got a little lost. It's fine at this phase because it's since things are wet, it'll actually give us a soft edge, which is what we want. I'm going to continue this thought that I'm on right here with this crimped part where it ends. It's have this darker color, and then when we get to the fur, we'll obviously go up to that, soften that, and it goes over it a little bit. That looks good. Give myself a little edge since I have some paint on the brush that will help with that. Same on this side. Okay, I'm gonna wipe the brush down again and give us some light color there. All right, my light color, I'm gonna make it kind of light, so I'm gonna use some of this Warm White by Michael Harding. And just kind of use some of this lighter color that I've been using already with the transparent yellow oxide in this area. And the lightest area in this essentially is this part of the metal that's facing us. So I'm gonna just hit that first. Excuse me. I need to get something to drink. Bring it down into the rest of the area and sort of soften it. There's also a little bit at the bottom where it's crumped. There. And since I have some of this lighter color, I'm going to hit this little here. And a little here. And on the top. Okay, cool. Now, I want to finish one extra little thing before we move on. I don't think I want to use this paintbrush, but I'm gonna rinse it either way, just to protect it. Same with this other one. I'm gonna leave the bristle brush alone for now. We might end up using that. Okay, there we go. Perfect. All right, switching gears slightly. So now we are going to put in just a basic underpainting on the rabbit's foot. So to do this, I am looking at the rabbit's foot, and it's very turquoise, but also very green. So I'm going to use Viridian. And I'm going to use a little bit of this turquoise color, this Old Holland color I was telling you about at the beginning of the stream. Mix the two of those together. Like, part of me wants to add a little titanium initially to Viridian, but there's already titanium in the turquoise, the Old Holland color. Just zoom that out so you can see a little bit more. That's actually pretty good, but it's a little darker than I want. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix in a little lead white into that, but I am out of lead white on my palette, so put a little bit more down. Again, like I've told you in the beginning and other streams, I like to work in an organized fashion on my palette, going essentially from dark to light, and also using my rainbow of colors. The lead white is a little stiff. The one that I have, at least, it's an old tube that an old friend gave me, who's a wonderful portrait painter who passed away a few years ago, and left me a lot of his paint. And this is an old tube of Winsor Newton Cremants White, lead white. I don't even know if Winsor Newton makes this anymore. But in spite of how old it is, it still works. It might be a little stiff. Put some linseed oil in it. Blend it, mull it. It's fine. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna, I'm going to mix all of that. I was trying to think if I wanted to remove some of that from my palette knife before I blended it into the turquoise, but no, I think it's good. And holding it up, that is pretty darn close to what I want. It actually has a little bit more kind of a yellow color to it. So I'm going to add yellow ochre. The transparent yellow oxide might bump us a little too much. Yeah, that right there is good. So all I'm going to do for the rabbit's foot for now is just like wash that in almost as a solid color, but not entirely. I've changed brushes into a different brush that gives me a different control that I want. This is a number 3 Filbert Master Series sort of bristle brush from Rosemary and Company. And just gonna wash in this color. Nothing formal at all at this stage. This is just getting something down for us to work with. The bristle brush will give us a softer effect than if I use something that was more rigid. I mean, I guess the bristle brush is rigid, so that's not entirely true. But for some reason, a bristle brush allows you to just like scrub in your paint and it can still stay soft. It's a wonderful brush. I don't always use it throughout the painting, but in the early stages. All right. Y'all know I like to have control of my paint at all times. So the beauty of the paint book, when you put a metal plate on the back, is you can flip it. Okay, it helped me get up close to that metal clasp, and now I want to get the edge of the rabbit's foot. So let me flip it again to get this side. Again, like I said earlier in the stream, is you want this to be soft. So we put in that shadow first, remember? And now since we're working into the rabbit's foot, I can go up against that and even go into it, over it a little bit, whatever, just kind of remove what's there a little bit, soften it. And it's much more convincing this way. Okay, cool. Now, we definitely want to give that more definition than it has in that present stage. But just having that down initially helps. So set that down, flip this again. There. So So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we'll work a little bit more into the fur and hair of the rabbit's foot to give it a little bit more form. So we might work at it like another 30 minutes or so once I come back, but this is a really good place for us to be. Okay, so I will be back in about 5 minutes. All right, so I'm back. Somehow my microphone had muted itself. I don't know if I accidentally clicked something, but sorry about that. If anyone has any questions, let me know. If I can explain anything. This is easy enough with the thumbtack that I'm putting in. I'm making it kind of a neutral look and everything. If for some reason I look at this later and I'm like, no, I want it to be a color, I can easily change that either through glazing a color on top of it or just obviously repainting that area. I have this set up in my studio so I can try to get a different thumbtack or nail and use. Which I'm not sure. I might, but I don't want to overthink it. It's not about the thing that's holding it in place. It's about the thing. And I could have used a thin nail, but this is what I had on hand, and I kind of liked it. And that works pretty good, actually. I might kind of let that be. Got my hand mirror here to help me look at things a little differently to see if things look okay. That thumbtack feels pretty good. I might actually try to fix a couple spots with it that are bothering me. I want it to have maybe a brighter highlight, a little less paint here on the edge and on the head of it. And then the shape on the right hand side where the shadow is, it gets a little lost. So I might not need to rinse, but I want more yellow ochre. That feels pretty good. Oh, I feel stupid about the microphone. I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't know how long I've been muted, but I remember when I came back from my break, I unmuted it and it was lit up. It's like, okay, cool, let's get back to work. So I don't know if I bumped it within the software. So sorry about that. I know I was explaining a lot of things and you guys weren't hearing that. Okay, that's looking good. Now, what I'm going to do, like I was doing earlier in the streams, I'm just going to use a standard cotton swab. These are kind that have a little bit of a tip to them. I'm just going to I'm going to use this side that's a little gummed up, actually, not the one that's got the nice tip, to kind of soften and blend a little bit around that shadow of this tack. That's pretty good. Certain things were just a little sharper than I wanted there, so I had to spend some time just to soften it and get it a little blended out. Okay, well, I think that where we are now is a good place to let the painting be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break, get a little lunch, check on my cats, and I'm probably going to come back after lunch and get back on this as well. I might also turn on the live stream, so if there's anyone that's here that would like to come back and watch the stream, you know, you can check back in, say, an hour. If you're subscribed to the channel, obviously you may get a notification from YouTube. But if you liked what you saw, anything I was saying, you know, please click the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't at this time. That'd be awesome. You know, any little bit helps, you know, with the algorithm and putting the content in front of those that have an interest in what I'm doing. But I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming by. And the painting that we're working on right now is looking really great. This is a good start. And as we spend more time on it later today, it's going to take more form, more definition, and we'll have this painting finished and literally this week very quickly. But thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again here very soon. Thank you.